Alrighty, so I'm going to be covering some basic things about ice screw holders. I have three in front of me, and they're three different ones. We'll kind of get into that going into the video, but this is just going to be a basic kind of overview. If you want more information, I'll go more in depth, and I'll also put some more recommendations on my website. So you can actually go to my website, and then there'll be a little, page on there that says ice screw holders. If you click on that, it'll give you more information, more in depth about each one of these and other ones out there as well. But with that being said, let's just jump right into it. So starting off, we're going to go with the one that I have the most experience with, and that is the Petzl OCTO. It holds 8 screws. It uses more of like a vinyl type material that's coated. It does have a little pocket right here, so you can undo that. And then you can put like extra picks in there or wrenches. This one's great because it does hold 8 screws. And so now if you think about it, if you have 2 packs of these, that's 16 screws that you can bring in. That's super nice. That's a lot of screws. That's what I was using for last year. But the only kind of real downside with this design is that it really comes down to the coating on these tubes. It just, because any of these kind of like vinyl type materials, when it gets cold, they tend to like almost like freeze, I guess. The material just like tightens up and it just wants to stick in place. And sometimes, if you're getting done with the or you're, racking up and you accidentally push one of these tubes down and you take out a screw and just it stays folded like that. Then after a while in the cold, it just kind of like tightens up to that position, and then putting the screws back in can kind of be of a pain. It's not a huge deal, but it's definitely a lot of problems that a lot of this like vinyl type material can have that's coated. There's ice screw holders out there that deal with like recycled sign tarps. They have the same problem. So it's not something that's unique to this one. It's just it's a common problem with all of these all this type of material that has that coating. But overall, they're great. The screws don't really get caught in going in. And a good feature that they have are these little black tabs right here. These actually are like a little tab that goes into the screw. I don't know if you can see them. Probably too dark. But there's a little tab right there that actually goes through the other side, and it actually kind of holds the screw like a 17. It can get caught on one of the little threads, so then it makes it a little bit harder for the screw to come out on its own. It's a pretty nice feature. Definitely with this is a 10 centimeter screw, and then like a 13, they don't really go as far, so it won't really catch it as much. But definitely with your longer screws, like your 21s and your 17s, they definitely catch. And it's a nice overall thing to not have your screws just kind of pop out all the time. But overall, it's a great ice screw holder. I like it probably a little bit more. It's probably one that I reach for more other than what I'm using this year, and I'll get into that. But yeah, it's a great screw holder. Like I said, holds 8, and that's super convenient. Closure system is just a basic one. You wrap it up, and then you just have a little buckle right there, and then you're good. So that is the Petzl OCTO. It's a great ice screw holder, and yeah, it works. And then when it gets cold, that material has a little bit of a problem. But moving on from the Petzl OCTO, let's go to the Black Diamond ice screw up. This is kind of like another one. It's another manufacturer's ice screw holder. This one's interesting because it uses a different type of material. This is almost more like a Cordura type material, so it's a very tight weave, but it doesn't have that coating. So it doesn't deal with a problem of when it gets cold, like things like tighten up and then it's hard to put your screws in. It doesn't deal with that. But, it's kind of got a different overall design. I mean, the closure system is just a strap with the little thing. So that's a little bit different, but kind of one of the main things about this one is that it only holds 6 screws. Now you can look at this as good and bad. It's great because, let's say you're going with someone who has their own rack. This is a great thing because then you can just bring a few of your screws and then you're good. But then if you're trying to carry your own rack, you are pretty much forced to carry 2 of these just to get 12 screws. Whereas like when I said about the Petzl OCTO, it carries 8, and then you have 2 of those, it's 16. So it's a lot more screws that it can carry versus this, and that's probably kind of one of the downsides about this one. The other downside that is kind of more unique to the Petzl one that it does pretty well is it does have that little tab right there. These don't have any tabs, so the screw definitely goes in without a problem, but definitely can slide out because there's nothing holding that screw in other than just the screws that are just right next to it. And sometimes, as you can kind of see, these pockets have a little bit more space to them, and so the screw does have room to move around. And because of that, there's not a lot, like these screws slip a lot more than the ones in the Petzl one. Even when you have a fully loaded one like this, the screws can easily just be pulled out from the top. So yeah, it does have a zippered pocket right here for, you know, picks and wrenches and all that. It's a pretty basic feature that along all ice screw holders. It does have little hang-up clips, same thing. I didn't really show it off with the Petzl OCTO, but it does have these little hanging ones so it can all drain. So what's kind of the benefit with this one? It's definitely more the material that's used. The material does not get caught, and it doesn't freeze up, I guess. And that is kind of an upside to this. Downsides, there's a lot more room with, you know, with the tube, so screws move around a little bit more. And probably the fact that you can only hold 6. That can be a big drawback, or like I said, you know, it's very situational. It can be an upside because then it means you're gonna pack in less screws. But yeah, that's kind of the Black Diamond screw up. I definitely like the ability to carry more screws. I just like to have more screws. But yeah, so that's the Black Diamond screw up. As you can kind of see here, like these screws just move a lot, and you know, the closure system, I definitely am more of a fan of like a buckle rather than a strap. I just think it's more of a pain in the butt to deal with the strap than it is just to deal with a buckle, but that's just me. But yeah, so I mean, this is a fully loaded one. It has 6 screws, and yeah, it just, because those pockets are pretty wide, every screw kind of moves, and you know, if I were to hold this upside down and start shaking these just start coming out. So they don't really hold, but you know, overall, it's a pretty good design. Material is definitely probably the upside of this, but everything else is, there's a little bit more to be desired with this. And yeah, so that's the Black Diamond screw up. Ice screw up, I believe. And so now we're gonna get into what I'm using currently. This is kind of a more special one because it's an Ace Anker ice screw holder. This is the one I've been using pretty much for the entire year, and it's pretty cool. As you can see, I can fit a whole lot of screws in this. This holds 12 screws. And that's super handy, and I actually really like it for that because it's what I need. I mean, I can hold 8 13s and then 3 17s and then 1 21. And that's like every screw that I would need for a majority of the routes that I'm trying to do. And you know, it's got a base, you know, it's got like the little pocket right here. It's got a little rubberized coating on the back, so you know, picks and wrenches don't really slip out. It's got that. But it's just the fact that this can hold 12 screws is kind of what does it for me. Like I said, last season and a little bit of this season, I was using the Petzl OCTO. It's not a bad ice screw holder, but what I've kind of noticed already when switching to this is that, you know, because you would have 2 of these to hold all my screws, they kind of, in my pack, they would stack up on each other about that high. Whereas this is kind of like in between that size. So I've actually found that when I use this, I have a little bit more room in my pack. And that's pretty helpful because that means I can just pack in jackets or any extra equipment, and I don't have that much extra that I don't have to, you know, find space for everything. And yeah, this is just, I'm really happy with this. The only thing that I don't really care for with this, and it's just a small gripe, but you know, compared to like the Black Diamond one with the material that I was saying, you know, it's a very fine knit, it's a very tight weave, so screws don't really snag on this. And even with the Petzl one, with the ones inside, you can kind of see right there, it's still a pretty tight weave, and screws don't really get caught on this either. This one, the screws definitely get caught on even the inside of the tube. You can kind of just see it's more of it's a looser weave, and that can it can get irritating because you can be moving these up and down, and the teeth can get like right there. It gets caught on it, so then you have to like fuss around with it. It's not a big deal. It's just a little annoyance with it. But I think overall, I'm 100% fine with dealing with it because the advantages of bringing 12 is it far outweighs just that little getting caught. But yeah, like this one is another one that just it's got little loops right here so you can hang these up so they can try out. And yeah, this is by far my favorite one that I've used. I just love the ability to bring in 12 screws in one holder. There are some other ones from other companies that kind of do the same thing that are even more niche than this one. I think there's one from it's like Cascade Mountaineering Equipment or whatever. I'll put a link to it probably in the bottom of the video. And like I said, you can check out my website. I will go more in depth about all the little features, and probably on my website I'll also show what else is out there. These are just the options that I have and that I've used, but there are a lot of other options out there, and I'll just kind of link that all up. But overall, this is the one I'm using. This is the one I'm most happy with. And yeah, so that's kind of it for the video. I know it's kind of a random video, but it's just one that I think should be out there because, you know, like I said, a lot of the ice screw holders can be overlooked, and it makes sense why, because like I said, they really are just for the transport of your screws and making sure that they don't get damaged and for storage. But, you know, there are a bunch of options out there, and I just kind of want to show you guys, you know, kind of what's out there and what I've used, and, you know, which one is better than the other. And, you know, it all comes down to preference. But yeah, so that's kind of it. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. Like I said, check out my website for the more in-depth things. If you go to the website, there should be like a little page, and it will say something like, I think it's just ice screw holders. And yeah, if you go to that, you can have, there'll be a lot more information there. And it's also another place where I can update things. And yeah, so I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I will see you guys in the next one.